All right, so what are we doing here tonight? What is the yard? For those of you who've been here before, forgive me for going over information you're familiar with. The yard, number one, is part of Commissary Club. And Commissary Club is a social network for folks with records. We launched that a couple of months ago, and we're experiencing great enthusiasm from our users as we put them together so that they can connect with one another. You know, we believe that we know that there are 70 million of us, people with records. That's 1 in 3 adults. And despite the size of this population, most people have no idea really who we are and what we're about. And they even have less insight into what it is to be behind bars, to be in prison, to be incarcerated. We're hoping that by doing what we're doing, and I think this is our 9th week doing it, that folks who are involved and watching and listening will sort of get some insight into who we are, you know, which is to say, you know, we're just obviously just human beings, pretty much like anybody else, you know, which is to say perfectly imperfect. Like everybody else, we love our families, we love our friends, we worry about money. And what surprises a lot of people is that every day we try to be better people than we were the day before, you know, and at that, sometimes we succeed, sometimes we fail terribly, but that's what we try to do. So the goal here is to try to simulate in a very unthreatening, safe way, those moments in prison that when we were let out of wherever, you know, we were living in prison and let out into the yard. So you can have a feeling of what the experience is all about. You know, again, that we're average people in very unaverage circumstances. In the yard, and each yard is different from each prison, but generally speaking, in the yard, it's a place where, you know, people connect, which is our goal in general in doing all this. And in the yard, you know, if you're walking around, you're going to see people who are laughing and seems to be having a lot of fun. And there are people who are arguing and people who are fighting and worse. And there are people who are just making shit up about who they are and who they were, because sometimes it's hard to really verify, and you can be anyone you want in prison. And sometimes people are very upset. You know, sometimes they got bad news from home. You know, something sad happened, or they had an appeal that failed. And anywhere else, probably you would see their tears, but in the yard, that's one thing you try to avoid. You don't want to show that sort of weakness. But whatever it is, it's a very human kind of thing that's going on in the yard. Now, for housekeeping's sake, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share, please use the chat feature on the bottom of the screen, and we'll try to get to your questions or the points that you're trying to raise. Adrian, who is really the brains of the operation, and she's also on our team, she's behind the scenes and she's managing the flow of all that. If you want to join the conversation about halfway through, you know, we sometimes will let 1 or 2 people join us. So if you know, have something to say and want to partake and be involved here, you know, please let Adrian know through the chat. So without any further ado, let me introduce, you know, our 2 guests tonight, who I think are going to be very, very interesting for all of us. And like Seth and like Divine and like myself, they too have done time in prison. Number 1, we have David Garlock. Hey, David.
Hey, how y'all doing?
We're good. Thank you. And thank you for joining us. David and his brother grew up in Alabama. I think you'll pick up on that accent soon enough. And I think it's fair to say that David and his brother had a very troubled home life growing up. Over an 8-year period, they were subjected to sexual abuse on an ongoing basis. Eventually, David and his brother could just stand this no longer, and they conspired to kill this abuser once and for all. They were arrested for this, and they both received 25-year sentences. About halfway through their sentence, they got the help of the famed attorney Brian Stevenson, who was very, very integral and helpful in them earning their release after serving 13 years of their sentence. Since he's been released, David I believe he's earned his bachelor's degree and a master's degree, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it was just a bachelor's degree. While I was actually in prison, I was able to get a master's of theology through an unaccredited school.
Okay. So obviously focused on his education, and now he serves as the Lancaster, PA program director for New Prison Ministries. At the same time, he's involved with a bunch of other things, including working for the parole of elderly prisoners. So David, amazing to have you. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Yeah, welcome, David.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. We'll see how you feel at the end, though. So I would just, reserve that comment. We also have a friend of ours. That sounds very mafia-ish.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we have friends like that here too. We have our friend Aaron Smith. Aaron is the founder and host of a very popular podcast, and maybe Adrian at a certain point will put up a link to Aaron's podcast in the chat room. The podcast is called Escaping the Odds. And both Divine and I had the pleasure of appearing, on different occasions on this podcast and had great conversation with Aaron. Aaron himself did 9 years of federal time for drug charges. And I think in prison, he noticed something that I noticed too when I was in prison, that many of the people you meet in prison are really incredible entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
I'm looking at my friend Divine. He's a classic entrepreneur, and Seth started a business, and he noticed that a lot of the people there, if they were born into different circumstances, chances are they would have been, the next Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, but for their circumstances. And, he thinks that that's something, and I agree, that people need to understand that there's some amazing talent out there, amazing investable talent out there, as a matter of fact.
Sure. Yeah.
And he is determined to give them the spotlight to share what they're up to. So Aaron, thank you so much for joining us as well. We really appreciate you being here.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it, bro.
It's our pleasure, believe me. Now, I'm going to ask everybody, this is something I've done every single time we've done this. And I'm going to ask you to go with me on this again. Just trust me. Shouldn't be a problem. What? All right. So
I feel like we're at the cliff ready to jump off. Like, okay, let's do this.
Trust me, though. This time,
just go ahead and put your boots on. No big deal. It's fine.
Yeah. So anyway, I would like everybody, including our guests and our hosts and everybody who's listening. First of all, everybody just take a deep breath. Okay? Take a deep breath, let it out slowly, and just sort of let go of the day and sort of focus on where we are here right now. Next thing I'd like you to do is everybody shut your eyes. Just keep them closed. Thank you. And I'm going to ask you to imagine, if you will, that right now, at this moment, you're in a prison. You're a prisoner in a prison. Now, for some people, it's not that hard to imagine it because they were there and it wasn't too long ago. Some of you really going to have to use your imagination. So let me sort of add to fill in the details of what your life is in this prison. chances are you're sharing a tiny cell that if you stood in the middle of it and put your arms out, but, and raise them out, parallel to the floor, you would touch both walls. And one of the walls you'd be looking at probably had some bars on it. And you're sharing this tiny cell with someone else. And if you're a man, it's another man. If you're a woman, it's another woman. But chances are, man or woman, they're 6 foot, 6 inches tall and weigh 290 pounds. There's somebody big in that prison cell with you. And you're sharing the same breath, in and out and in and out all day. And in this era of coronavirus that we're going through, it's impossible that that ever will leave your mind, because you know full well that probably 50% in the prison, if not more, have already come down with coronavirus. And you can't help but notice when you look out through the bars, you're watching guards holding on to stretchers where they're carrying out people, inmates, maybe people maybe friends. And as much as you don't want to think about it, the truth is that some of these people they're carrying out, you may never ever see again. But once a day, in the midst of all of this, once a day, there's an announcement for you, assuming you're not in trouble, you're not in solitary, you haven't screwed up terribly. Once a day, they're announcing that it's your turn to go out into the yard. Your turn to get some fresh air. Your turn to take a walk. Your turn to get away from the guards who are just hassling you mercilessly all day. To get away from the lines that you're just interminably on for no particular reason. All the stupidity you have to deal with on a daily basis. For this period of time, maybe it's an hour and a half, you have a chance to go out and hopefully it's not freezing cold like it is now. Hopefully it's a nice day, the sun is shining. Hopefully you can just lose where you are for a minute. Maybe you'll toss around a football with your friends. Maybe you'll go to the weight pile, which is where they have gym equipment and you'll lift some weights. Or chances are, at a certain point, you're going to just walk over to the same area that you go to every single day, because that's where your people are. That's where your friends are. That's where your boys are, your girls are. These are your friends that you've made, where you hang out with them. And these are the people you talk to. And again, it's a time that you're going to laugh maybe, and you're going to argue with each other, and you're going to call each other out on their bullshit. And if someone got some bad news, you'll be supportive, and you'll tell them that things are going to work out. And you'll share moments with each other, which mean more to you than the 60 minutes that you've invested in them, because for that 60 minutes, you actually can feel like maybe just a little bit you're a human being for that one time during the day. It's an amazingly valuable time. You won't let somebody see you crying. You won't look at somebody the wrong way, because fights can break out, whatever. But right now, with your friends, you can make believe that you're not going to be stuck in this prison forever, that you're not going to get sick, that your friends are going to be around, and that maybe you have another life that lies ahead of you. And maybe, again, you can tell yourself, you know something, despite how I'm being treated, I really am a human being. So if you could all just please now open your eyes, and thank you for going on that little trip with me. And let's get this started. You've joined your guys, your girls. You're sitting on a picnic table that you do every single day when you're out in the yard. And you're just there to kick it and keep it real with them. So let me just start to get things going here. Aaron, in researching your story, you talk a lot about like your LinkedIn and whatever, and you use the word humanize as part of your goal and your mission. which is obviously in line with what we're after too. When you first went to prison, is that the way you were treated?
No, absolutely not.
How were you
And-
treated when you first got to prison?
I mean, pretty much like it was nothing personal. You know, of course, as you and I both know, they don't call you by your first name. So right there, they're stripping you away from like your identity, if you will. So it's always Smith, 1-877-98424. You know, I'll never forget those
I was
numbers,
about
right?
to ask you if you remember your number.
Yeah, you know, so you always go remember that. And the crazy part about it, like that number almost becomes like you learn to, not everybody, but you represent your number. It's crazy, right? Mine's 424, is the last three numbers, right? That's Chicago. And so people identify you based upon your last three digits. And so, okay, they know you from Chicago, and you know, so they may look at you differently, right? Or they know you from Iowa, they may look at you differently. But as far as like the inmates, but as far as like the system, if you will, again, it was nothing, it was no identity. You know what I'm saying? Everybody was quote unquote supposed to be the same. We wore the same khakis or the gray sweatsuits. You know, we all got the same $300 a month, 300 minutes on the phone.
Yeah.
And you know, but you always try to find ways to differentiate yourself from the next person. You know,
Even when even the thing that you had unique is most people don't go by their own names anyways. You know,
Exactly,
like
right,
everybody's
yeah.
got a nickname. Did you have a nickname when you're down?
Yeah, I did. On the streets, I was called Ace.
Ace.
Yeah. But to be honest with you, like once I kind of grew my mentality, I had that growth. I kind of stepped away from my nickname because I was on a bigger and better thing, you know.
Yeah.
So I was like, I told people, hey, look, just refer to me as my as my government name. So
Yeah. How
that's
about you,
how it's
David?
been,
Do you have a nickname?
I mean, I really didn't have a nickname. I mean, I played a lot of basketball in Alabama. You know, the one thing about that is sports in Alabama, if you play basketball, it was primarily blacks playing basketball.
Yeah.
It was primarily whites playing volleyball. Softball is whoever wanted to play and was good, you know.
Yeah.
So if you're out there on the basketball court and you're a white dude, here's one
Yeah.
thing. There's two things. One, you better know how to play. Number
Right.
two, you better be ready to take some hard fouls, you know. And so I'd take it to the hole. They knock me to the ground. They're like, okay, he's not going to come back again. Next time down, I'm coming right back in there again, you know. And I play point guard, so they would call me White Chocolate, you know. And so there, and then
You and Jason
some people will
Williams.
call me G-Lock, you know, because guard lock,
There you go.
you know.
Right.
But to talk about what Aaron was talking about as far as dehumanizing is like in Alabama, when you come into Kilby Correctional Facility, which is the receiving prison, you're treated like a cow. I'm talking about you're coming into the back gate handcuffed and shackled. You walk into the back gate room, you're strip searched, butt naked, you know, do the whole thing, bend over, cough, etc. You put on a jumpsuit. So that's the last time you're wearing your free world clothes. Then you go into the receiving area, strip searched again, spray you with the spray, you shower, and then you're given your uniform. And on your uniform is stamped your number. So there it is. I'm being branded. You know, I'm no longer David Garlock. I'm 214579. And that's the thing, you know, it's all about that treating us like cattle, you know, and just that whole mentality that
you really identified that you were being treated like cattle. I mean, that's not just, you know, for use in descriptive purposes. That's really how you felt.
Absolutely, you know, because here's another thing too. I mean, everything is like they tell us what to do. They herd us to the chow hall. At one prison, we ate breakfast at 4 a.m. We ate lunch at 10:30. We ate dinner at 4 o'clock. And if you don't go with the herd,
you don't eat.
You don't eat.
Yeah. Hey, so I got to interrupt. This is great conversation here, but we were talking about prison nicknames. And I don't think we've addressed this in our 9 episodes, but it's really, I mean, talk about like the 7-foot gorilla in the room. our host and friend, Seth Sundberg. Seth, what was your nickname in prison?
7.
7.
Yeah.
Could you stand up if you don't mind?
You can't
So
tell
people
on the screen.
So just do it though. I think people will
Doing a
still-
juggle?
Okay. What you're looking
Doing a
at,
juggle.
that screen normally fits a 6'3" human being. Seth, however, is 7'1".
Extra large screen.
Seth is double Seth for the money, no doubt.
So did you ball in prison though?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. So I did a year in county, and in county jail, you got chunglas, and that's it. You don't have tennis shoes. You don't have shit. So
You explain what you just said?
yeah, chunglas are just flip flops.
Shanays.
Yeah.
Wait, you guys actually had a place
where
where you could play basketball in the county jail?
they had one hoop, but I played handball a lot, and playing handball in flip flops was something else at 7 feet. So it was actually fun.
So the county jail I was in Alabama, Walker County Jail, we had no TV, no radio, no newspaper, no sports stuff. So we got creative. We're like, okay, we're gonna do something to have fun. So we took the little like wood part off of a plunger, put toilet paper around it, put it in one of the laundry bags. We created this like baseball out of trash and cellophane and put in a sock. And so we had full contact baseball. It was me, my brother, and another person versus 3 other guys. And I'm talking about, it was crazy, but it was fun. And what was very like intriguing was there were some CEOs that would come in and they'd come on the microphone. They'd be like, what's the score in the World Series? So
Now, starting at left tackle.
So David brings up a very, very interesting point. And that is that part of the prison experience that people don't immediately think of, they think of the violence or the racial stuff or the guards or whatever, or the bad food. But implicit within the entire experience is the requirement or the need for creativity to address every sort of challenge that you're faced. There are people, you mentioned, David, if you don't get online at 4 a.m., you're not going to eat. Well, we also know that there were certain people in prison who never once went to the cafeteria.
Right.
Where I was, it was the guys, from South America and Cuba who, we had a bunch of microwaves in my prison, and they made all of their meals. And they were able to come up with these amazing recipes. And, in a million years, they wouldn't eat the cafeteria. They just thought that was just, you can put me in prison, but I ain't eating that shit.
I wonder why.
What's that?
I said, I wonder why they wouldn't eat it.
Why. But let me ask you a question, Aaron. Where did your creativity come out when you got to prison? What did you learn how to do really quickly that you didn't know before?
Man, how to occupy my time.
Okay. How did you do that
How
creatively?
to occupy my time. Like I would wake up and be like, okay, all right, I know I need to do something like 3 areas of my life. I got to do something physically, spiritually, and mentally, right? So I was on this regimen, and so I'll probably work out. That was my creative relief. You know what I mean? Like I'll make up all kind of workouts. You know what I mean? Especially if like the yard was on lockdown or something like that. I'll be doing some stuff inside of my cube or in a day room, just kind of just like keeping myself together. So for me, the creativity as it relates to like working out was like the biggest thing that I did.
Yeah.
So,
Seth,
yeah.
you used to create weights, right? Out of bags with
the
water.
water bag. Yeah.
Yeah.
At different spots. When I got to the camp, I did most of my time in a medium, and then I got to the camp and they didn't have any weights. It was a newer facility, and the feds they take out all the weights, right? So
Yeah.
you're like, all right, shit, let's make a water bag. And I did a year in county jail, and we made water bags in county, so it was like the same thing.
Water bag weights.
Water bags,
or
man.
also
Water bag
using the getting a laundry bag, putting your books in there.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like a mop stick, something like that, doing curls with that. That works. Yeah, all that. Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
As far
Somebody
as me,
I'm sorry, David.
I was just saying, as far as my creativity is, I mean, in Alabama, the thing that's interesting is almost everybody that has a job, you don't get paid. So you're working 40 to 60 hours a week, depending on the job you have, and you don't get a single penny for that work.
What?
Mm.
So, like with me, my brother and I, we didn't have family like sending us money. So we had to come up with ways to make money. So I love writing poetry, and I was decent with like drawing and coloring, stuff like that. So I started making greeting cards.
Yeah.
And I mean, people loved my greeting cards, not really because of the art being that amazing, but because of the poems that I wrote. People would be like, wait, you wrote that and all this, so it was an amazing way. The last prison I was at, I got to the point where I was actually having guards, doctors, and nurses buy cards from me for like $5. So I was like, okay.
And what they use? You get fish and stamps.
I mean, I would get whatever, coffee,
Right.
Yeah,
zoom
typically
zooms
in
and wham
prison,
whams.
in prison, there are certain barter items that are, in my prison, it was cans of mackerel.
Yeah,
or
mackerel. Yeah, that's
max,
a,
as
yeah,
they
that's
The
call
whole,
them.
king.
yeah,
What?
everybody was on the max.
You,
Especially with
you
the
had
stamps.
cans, Richard?
We had cans and we had bags of tuna fish. So we had both.
Yeah.
We had a bag. We had bags of mags. I never got to a place that had cans of
The
it.
Yeah,
can
me
was
neither, yeah,
great
yeah.
because like batteries, you put it in a sock and you swing that and nobody's giving you a hard time again so soon.
Yeah. When I first went in, stamps was the
Stamps is another thing. So
Yeah.
Sheila, who's joined us, is wanted to share something that is really kind of shocking and awful. And I think she's asking if anyone has any ideas or thoughts or just support. So let me just tell you what she says, that there's been a report of a COVID outbreak in the Prince William County Jail in Maryland.
Mhm.
And what she's found out there is that they're only allowed to shower twice a week, and they're confined to their cells the rest of the time. No visitation, no commissary, no nothing.
Mm.
I'm going to be talking about that later in my rant, in the conditions that people are going through. I'm trying to help out, she says. I guess she has a loved one there, I'm guessing, but she's hit a roadblock. She's asking that they're not even, she said, we have also found out that they're not being given food and are not able, and they're not able to keep the areas clean. So it must be just disgusting and awful. And she's asking, and she said that the guards, who are normally, it's fully staffed, because so many of them have gotten sick, there's very few guards there. So it must be just an incredible environment where chaos is just around the corner, certainly. And she's very concerned about it, I guess, again, that she has some loved one who's there. Does anyone have any idea of I mean, my first reaction would be that you got to go to the media immediately with this story, and they got to get it out there, because the only way the governor of Maryland, who's, from what I understand, not that bad of a guy, is that it needs to get publicity, that people hear about how terrible it is there. So that would be my first piece of advice. Does anyone have anything they want to share?
Bridget just put in the chat that they did have some reports on it about the news and everything. And I mean, just to go along with that, I mean, in the age we have right now, it's just about using Twitter, using Instagram, using social media, because that's a way to get people to be aware of it.
Right.
And I mean, the more times that the governor or the other leaders are getting added on Twitter, they're gonna be like, okay, we need to do something because all this is going wrong, and
Yeah.
I mean, the state that we're in right now with COVID, and I mean, when it all started, the county jails did the best work around it, because
Yeah, county
Most county
jails have let
jails.
more people out than
Yeah,
prisons.
they average like 30 to 60%, where the state prisons and the BOP only let out between 3 to 5%.
Yeah.
Mhm. One of the things that I did on my own podcast, I got tons of my buddies still locked up. I recorded one of the conversations talking about, their experience with the COVID at their particular institution. I put that out on my podcast, for people to kind of check out, almost like as a bonus episode. So that's something that could be done as well, just to interview, or just record the conversation with somebody who's experienced what it is and just put it on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll certainly post news about this on Commissary Club and try to get out the word. Somebody is waving.
Yeah, Marie.
If you send Marie, if you send Adrian a thing through chat and share with her whatever you want, she'll make sure, or just post it yourself in the chat. Okay, whatever you prefer doing, because we want to hear what you have to say. But thank you. All right, so let's get back to prison that we're all right now in. Aaron, what, if anything, surprised you when you got to prison? What weren't you expecting?
Man, well, really the camaraderie, between the guys. Like I just, cause I went in with a mindset like, look, I ain't taking no wood nickels, meaning that I ain't taking nothing off nobody, right? You know what I'm saying?
Well,
So,
is that what do you mean? You were ready to throw down if
yeah.
anyone looked at you the wrong way?
I would not. I mean, maybe not looked at me the wrong way, but I just wasn't taking nothing off nobody. You know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't gonna be that guy. You know what I'm saying?
Word up.
And so, but when I got there, it wasn't really like that. You know what I'm saying? Like I was really embraced. You know what I'm saying? I knew a few people from the streets. Co-defendants was there, and it was like one thing I realized is that like say you lose a family member or you're going through something like you sick or something like that, you'd be surprised some of the toughest guys will make sure that you straight. You know what I'm saying? Because one thing you realize is that you could be that person that's laying in bed sick, or you could be that person that get that call from the chaplain that's saying your mom passed, brother, you know what I mean? Something like that. So I think with that, people kind of like, they know that they could be in that situation. They want that support as well. And so I was surprised about the amount of support that a person gets while they're incarcerated from the guys that's, the gang, you know what I mean, the mob or whatever, anybody that you may look at on the street and say, okay, that person probably wouldn't really, he wouldn't really rock with you like that, or he really wouldn't care, but everybody's like in it together.
Yeah, I think that when we're incarcerated, more likely than not, humanity shines. Humanity comes out, right? We're all in the same situation. We're all going through the similar things. And even though prison is a volatile, unpredictable environment,
right?
Mm-hmm. To see, I think humanity just comes out with certain individuals. Like you said,
yeah,
it could be some mafia, dude that just kills people on a regular or whatever it is. And, he's breaking bread with you and,
right.
give you some of his pasta and linguine or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it gets crazy, man. But,
yeah,
the humanity, man, shines, man.
No,
I mean, to go along with that, so in Alabama and most of your medium and maximum security prisons, they have this thing called the faith dorm. So the faith dorm is a separate dorm that people who are practicing faith live in. So just imagine you have 136 people in this dorm. So you have Muslims, you have Christians, you have Native Americans, you have Wiccans.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all living together, and there's no animosity, there's no hatred, there's no fighting, bickering, whatever. And it was very surreal, because if you think about it in different contexts, you'd be like, there's no way that you'd be able to have that cohesion and that family support that you had in there. But that's what it was, because we all knew each other was on this journey together. Did we all believe the same thing? No, but we were all walking this journey together, and that was what was powerful.
When you say that, like, not to get too deep into the religious conversation piece, but how much of other religions did you learn, by being in that dorm, right? That you probably wouldn't have been exposed to, or been like, you know what? I thought that it was this. I mean, what I noticed is a lot of different religions are like, this is the answer and that's it. And you learn other people's, belief systems and structures and why they believe in. You're like, makes a ton of sense too. Like, like this is this, and it doesn't, that was my experience. Did you see that? I mean, imagine I didn't have a faith dorm, but I saw, I saw a lot of that in prison. Is that I imagine it's even amplified inside.
I mean, definitely, and I mean the thing that it provided was really opportunities to have conversation, and it wasn't in, like, say if you were out on the yard, and you come up with somebody who has a different beliefs where you're just like debating or you're trying to convert somebody, this is just like kicking it and just chatting, and learning about the other's faith. So
I told the story. I just want to share it again because it just reminds me of something. There's a lot, you meet a lot of characters in prison. I think that's fair to say.
Wait, what?
Characters.
I was
Yeah.
gonna go there.
For
You
real.
meet a lot of people that are just nuts, and funny and weird and interesting. There was this one guy I was in prison with. His name was, I don't know if I should say his name. His first name was Al. Al was brought up as an Italian Catholic guy. And Al was really one of the biggest con men in a prison filled with con men. Okay, so that is high praise I'm giving the guy. He figured out, he noticed that for each of these different religions, including Wiccan, which you mentioned, David, I never knew there were so many Wiccan people, but a lot of them end up in prison, apparently. I don't know if they convert to it when they get there or they were first, or I don't know. But he noticed that they each, obviously they all have their own religion, and they have religious observances, and they have different holidays, and that during these holidays, there's food, different food that they get to eat. And the prison, like the Supreme Court ruled that people have a right to celebrate their religion when they're in prison. That's a right. It's one of the few rights you have in prison. You can't turn the TV on, but you can definitely get Wiccan food during the Wiccan holiday or whatever that is. So he noticed that. And he said, something, but you have to be part of the religion in order to get the food. You can't just say, I want it.
You have a free agent.
So what he did annually, he converted 11 or 12 times every year. He had to cycle where he went from Jewish back to Catholic to Wiccan to Native American and to Greek Orthodox, because they all had great food for their special holiday. And he had to go to the chaplain who oversees all of the religious activity in the prison.
Approved.
And he had to go for an interview, which of course he knew how to pass the interview. Oh yes, I've always been a Wiccan, And I was born in an Italian Catholic body, but I was meant to be a Wiccan or whatever.
Fill out the cop out, Al. We got you.
And then I go, all right, what religion is it today? What holiday? And the chaplain would look on the calendar. Oh, today you're going to be a Greek Orthodox or whatever. And Al, he ate very, very well in prison, and that was his creativity, I guess.
Oh man.
Well, when you were talking about the Catholic, it made me think about this guy. I'll just use his name as Tim. So this guy's doing time in Alabama from New York, and just Catholic to the max. And I'm talking about, he's always talking like this really fast. Blah, 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 blah. And I made a mistake. And I told him that when I was born, I was actually born in Florida. So I've been all over the place. So I actually didn't grow up in Alabama. But I was baptized into the Catholic Church by I think it was the Archbishop of St. Augustine. And so I told him that, and it was over with from then. He's like, you need to convert, you need to convert, you need to come back. You are Catholic, you need to come back, you need to come. Every time I was like, oh man, why did I ever tell him that?
You can't run.
Not really just the Catholic and him being from New York, just that accent and just talking so fast. I'm like,
oh, it's a New York.
What do you mean by New York specifically, David?
It was a high pressure call center that he worked at when he wasn't at the prison. which I trained him for, by the way. So I want to do something that we tried to do last week, and frankly, it didn't work out that well. But
Let's do it again.
Wait, Marcus Bullock it didn't work with Marcus?
I tried. Marcus was game, but I don't know. Maybe it's not a good idea. But I'm gonna just give it a try here. I call this section, because we're trying to make the show, like high production values. I think you could tell, right? That this is a real professional
A
operation.
classy yard here. This is
This is actually
Classy
better
right
than what they did for the movie Just Mercy.
David, I'm
so
talking
just
here.
giving you that props.
So here's what I want to do. As a part of our regular feature on the yard, is I call it, what do I call it? One Day in Paradise. So I'm going to ask you quickly, both of you. I'm going to ask Divine and Seth too. So the four of you. I'm going to ask you quickly. I want to know what your day was like in prison. Okay. I don't want a whole story. I don't want to know, about, explanations and other people and whatever. I just want it to be like as if, we all maintain calendars these days digitally, in our busy, organized day. Let's make believe that in prison, you were mapping out your day in your calendar as well. Okay. And, because if nothing else, prison has routine,
Right.
and that's something you kind of find some solace in it, that every day what it's going to be like. There are no surprises particularly, right? So just go with me. I'm going to ask you questions quickly. So number one, Aaron, what time in the day did you wake up?
6 a.m.
And how did you wake up?
What do you
What
mean? How
woke
did
you
I
up?
wake up?
What
Who
woke
woke
you
me
up?
up? Just after routine. The lights come on, you pop.
Okay, the lights came
Yeah.
on, you pop. David, when did you wake up?
7 a.m.
7 a.m. And how did you wake up?
The guards will come in yelling, count time.
Nice way to wake up. Seth, what about you?
Same time as I wake up now, 6:30.
6:30. And how did you wake up, 7?
With my my watch, my little fake G-Shock.
G-Shock.
I had one of those. Okay,
You customize it? Did you customize it?
No, I kept it OG. I kept it original.
Okay.
All right. Divine, when did you wake up?
5 a.m.
5 a.m.
Just routine.
Just
Yeah.
routine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get up.
D, you woke up at 5 a.m. What'd you do next?
Got my laundry bag because I had to shoot the laundry in the morning before I went to breakfast.
You had
my
to
laundry
do
in.
your laundry at 5 a.m. before you went to
You would
breakfast?
drop it. You would drop the laundry.
I see. How about you?
Going,
Gotcha. Seth, what did you do when you first woke up?
Chow hall. As soon as
Okay.
Yep.
So far, nobody said I take a shower, I brush my
Right.
teeth, or anything.
I go
Right.
brush my teeth and use the restroom, because I don't want to walk down there and just have that like funky breath, like, whoa, get away from me.
I did that after shower.
Okay. And what about you, Aaron? What do you do when you woke up?
Man, hit my face, bathroom, hit my face with the child.
Okay. You guys all went to chow. Aaron, what did you typically have when you got to chow for breakfast?
Depending on what day. So I'm assuming it was a Monday.
Okay.
Oatmeal, a couple glasses of milk. Got to get that protein in. I also got my little bottle so I can take back with me. So I'm gonna sneak that out the child hall for later on. What else? Maybe some French toast and banana.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dang, I wish I could have done time there.
Yeah, they fed you all right there. Yeah, they fed you okay there.
That's that federal movement.
What do you have? What do you eat, David, when you got to the mess hall?
We had grits and eggs and biscuits, but you have to realize there was no salt, pepper, any seasoning at all on the table. So bland, and more bland.
Why is that? Why didn't they have salt and pepper?
They would think that people would take it back to the dorm and contraband.
And what?
I mean,
Salt,
you could purchase it from people in the kitchen, but
that's so funny. Seth,
on commissary, no, you couldn't buy it on commissary.
Really?
What did you eat, Seth?
Yeah, if we're doing Mondays, I think Mondays was pancakes. In county jail, it was shit on a shingle, and it was actually it looked terrible, but I learned to like it. It was like, man, it's a gravy. It was,
and for the folks watching, don't know,
biscuits and
not
gravy
literal
the same
shit.
now anymore.
All right, D, what did you have?
Monday, oatmeal, banana,
Yeah.
water.
All right. That doesn't
Banana.
sound so bad. All right. Did you guys have jobs in prison? I had a job.
I
Yeah.
had a job.
For sure. Yeah.
What was your job, D?
I worked doing landscaping initially, then I got into Unicore to the factory.
Okay. So you were doing landscaping. And what time did you have to show up for work?
Like 7 a.m.
Okay. And you worked till when?
3:30, almost. Yeah, about 3:30.
Okay. What about
4
you,
o'clock
Seth? Did you have a job?
Yeah, I worked in the kitchen mostly. I worked in Unicorp for like 4 or 5 months, but
Unicore, for those who don't know what that is, that's in federal prison, Bureau of Prisons, and it's essentially slave labor.
Well,
And
affectionately
I'm
known as
using the word
Unicore.
essentially, and I don't even have to say essentially, it is slave labor. They have these businesses that the warden is, it's like right out of a shitty, movie that Burt Reynolds was in or something, where there's some crooked Southern cracker, warden who has a deal with a local businessman to do some kind of work. And, the warden gets a kickback from the businessman, and the businessman pays the inmates like 7 cents an hour, which of course is taxable. They pay him 7 cents an hour to work in this awful, like building beds or furniture or some like shitty job. And the inmates, some of them have no source they don't have friends or family on the outside with any money. So in order for them to have a canteen allowance, and the canteen is where the commissary is where you can buy stamps and salt and deodorant and also make a phone call, which most importantly. So you work to fund that. And, that's why they put up with it, but it's absolutely slave labor. It's obscene what goes on there. So that's Unicore. That's on the federal level. I'm sure there are all kinds of deals on the state level with wardens that they're able to rip off the inmates for that stuff. All right. So you did your stint at work, and you come back.
Hey, I didn't tell you about my job.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was your job, David?
I had multiple jobs, but because you were talking about the Unicore, so at most of the prisons in Alabama, you have potentially 50 jobs where you work for ACI, which is the Alabama Correctional Industries. So the one job I had like that, where the first 3 months I made 15 cents an hour. After that, I made 30 cents an hour. I worked in the printing press. So I actually made the governor's business cards, making 15 cents an hour.
did you put your name on it?
I was tempted to at times.
You're welcome, Gov.
Yeah, it's a great to learn a career in prison, and really plan out your life. All right. Well, okay. So let me quickly take you through the rest of your day. You come back from work.
And you didn't get what I did, man.
I'm so sorry, Aaron. I keep doing this, and I'm new at this, so you'll have to accept my apology. Nothing personal. What were you
Jay's
doing?
the manager.
It's all good. Hey, I probably had the sweetest job in the BOP. I worked at Corlinks. That was the email system, right? And so my job, well, it was like one of the highest paid jobs outside of commissary, right? I pretty much helped people. Really, I didn't have to help people with like getting online, not online, but like in their email, or like cleaning off the computers, wiping them down. Anything happen, like a keyboard get damaged, I'll replace it, right? Super sweet. Everybody wanted that job when I was the head orderly for that position. And so I think I got like $100 a month. So I was penitentiary rich with that.
Oh,
I went into early for something like that.
Yeah.
So that begs the question, Aaron, how did you get that sweet job?
I was there for so long. I was probably one of the longest standing inmates at that particular, because I was at a low security. And so at a low security, oftentimes you get people going down to the camps and all this. But for me, I couldn't go my security level wouldn't allow me to go any lower. So I seen people recycle and come in, come out, but I stayed. And so I was there for my whole bit. And because of that, I had the opportunity, I knew people or whatever, and people saying how I moved, and you're a great fit for it. I knew everybody too. And that was another thing. Like you had to be trusted in that position.
Networking, man. It's networking.
There you go. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
now look at
Ain't
you.
no
Yeah,
different.
there you go. Yeah.
You made a career out of it, Aaron.
Yeah,
That's
right.
good. So let me ask you guys a question. You know, people come to prison, you know, and one of their fears, I admit I had a fear, you know, am I going to be facing a violent environment? Is there going to be gangs? Is it going to be a whole racial thing, you know,
Right.
that creates all kinds of problems? Aaron, when you got to prison, were there any of these? I mean, I'm sure that went through your mind too, but in reality, was that going on? Any of those things that you had to
Yeah.
really address?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I realized in the federal system, it's about a couple of things, right? Of course, your geographical location, like where you from, right? That's one kind of a click.
Yeah.
But then also there's like the race involved, right? Black, white, Hispanic, or whatever. And so at the place where I was at, I was in Minnesota, and so it was probably 40% black, you know, probably equally across all main three races or whatever. But we did have, you know, some issues with the blacks and Hispanics over petty stuff though, you know. And even if you're not like you ain't trying to be involved in that kind of stuff, it's like you find yourself involved in that kind of stuff, right?
Was
Because
there
it's like
pressure on you to be involved?
no, it's not pressure at all. It's just like you just don't like. I guess put it like this: like they're gonna come at you regardless. You know what I mean? So even if you're not about that life, you're gonna protect yourself over anything, right? And so that's pretty much how it was.
You said they're going to come at you regardless. So you're
Right.
saying they did come at you. You did have to deal with it, at least initially. Is that what you said?
Right, yeah, because at the end of the day, I mean, you're black, you know what I mean? And so that's what they're going to see, and vice versa. You know what I'm saying? A person may look at them like, okay, they're Hispanic, and so it's us against them at that time, right? And so that's what it's going to be, unfortunately. You know what I mean? Because you have to choose a side in a sense. You know, you don't
You
want to be
do.
caught out there. It's like you have to. I got a quick story about that, right? Real quick, right? One of my he turned out to be kind of one of my mentors, but he has got sentenced to a 35-year sentence. This is an example of how like even if you're not on that, you got to be on that, right? And so he got sentenced to 35 years. He went to Florence USP, which is in Florence, Colorado, right? It was like a USP. And he was like, man, the minute
That's
he
a
got on the yard,
penitentiary, which is a high level security.
right. And so once he got on the yard, he's like, man, I got this 35 years. I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna do it. And so the instant he made it to the unit, they said, okay, at rec move, at 4:30 rec move, when we, you know, on the move, going to the yard, all the blacks got to go to the yard. He's like, man, what, you know, he fresh in, so he don't know what's going on, right? And so the guy gave him another black dude, gave him a knife. He like, man, what's he like, man, I'm cool, man. I ain't on none of this. I'm on Christian time, meaning that he just gonna be about God is on his bit, right? He's like, that's cool, but along with this Bible, you gonna take this shank too, right? And so once he got to the yard, he had to understand it's like, and I forgot what he told me it was about, but it's like it's a couple hundred black guys on the yard, and they talking about what's going to potentially happen. You know what I mean? And that's how it is. You know, even if you're not on that, you know what I'm saying? It's like you have to protect yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And like I find myself in situations like that because I'm in a unit, I'm in the environment, so they're not going to look at me as like, okay, he's this cool, laid back guy. You know what I'm saying? When it goes up, anybody can get it. You know what I mean? And so you have to protect yourself.
Wow. David, did you have to address racial stuff when you went down?
I mean, really, the only racial stuff I had to deal with was with one corrections officer. So I had just shaved my head 3 days before I went down to prison, and so this is in Alabama. You know, if you're not familiar, they call it the Dirty South. And so when I went down to prison, I had this black officer just grab me and throw me against the wall. He's like, "You're a skinhead. You're a skinhead. I'm gonna beat you up. I'm gonna watch you and all this." I'm like, dude, I'm not even. I don't even am about anything like that. You know, he's like, "Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You got to." I was like, "I shaved my head. Can a white person shave their head?" He's like, "No, not in Alabama." And so, like, a week and a half later, he came up to me And he apologized to me. He's like, okay, I see that you're not about anything like that. Because in Alabama, you have your gangs, your Bloods, your Crips, your IGDs, etc. But then you have two big white gangs. You have the Aryan Brotherhood, but then you also have the Southern Brotherhood, and that's different from the Aryan Brotherhood. And so, you have all these different things, and you're always asked, are you going to join? Or I'm like, no, I'm not about anything like that, because I mean, growing up, I grew up in predominantly white area, but then I've lived in Los Angeles, where the football team I was on my senior year, I was one of 4 white guys on a team with 60 folks. You have 55 blacks, 1 Latino. I was the only white dude that would go out with them afterwards. So we have like 9 cars deep driving down Sepulveda or Venice Boulevard, and they'd always have me sit in the back car. And I'm like, why am I here? And then we had a cop come behind us one time, put the spotlight on us, he's like, black guy, white guy, black guy, white guy, and then they pull off. I was like, whoa, wow.
Huh. When we're on the yard, and I'm just wondering, I mean, I through my travels ended up at a bunch of different prisons, like some of you guys have as well. And I ended up at Rikers Island, which was like the worst place in the world, and I was at Yazoo City, Mississippi, at their max, where the yard there was this like huge dead space, like birds and insects didn't fly around because it was just such a dead kind of place, an evil dead place. And they had these electrified wires that they would have crisscrossing above you, because apparently 6 months before, some guy had a helicopter come down and grab him and have him escape that way. So now they make it impossible for that to happen. But at certain prisons, you got the feeling you walk out into the yard and like anything could happen, like at a moment's notice. Did you ever feel that way, Seth? Like that sense of danger?
So you just, you get that tingle in the air, right? You just go, uh-oh, something, I don't know what's going on, but I know something's going on.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I
They didn't tell you though.
Like, you're always in a kind of a hyper aware state. I tell this to a lot of people, but it's, you guys know it's people think that haven't been down. They think like prison is like just kind of a lethargic space, and like you just like kind of loaf around and just pass time or whatever. And it's the opposite. It's like this, you're hyper aware all the time, even when you're sleeping, and like you gotta be ready for whatever. And then that's part of the reentry process, right? You get out and you're like, all right, I don't have to worry about who's behind me right now. Like I couldn't have anybody behind me for like the first year that I was out. I was just like, nah, sorry. I gotta,
So interesting.
I'm a senator, so I'm used to having everybody in front of me anyway, you know what I mean? But like still, like this is even worse.
D, I remember I felt like I had to learn the stare, the look. Like when you're walking across the yard, like the don't fuck with me, motherfucker.
Yeah, the look will get you far. The look will get you far, and being quiet will get you far.
There you go.
No one knows how to
They don't know what to expect from you. Exactly.
Right. Nobody knows how to profile you.
Exactly.
They don't know, okay, this dude might pop on. We don't know what's
the loud guys you ain't got to worry about for sure.
Exactly. I mean, that air of mystery, you got to keep the air of mystery, man.
There you go. Perfect.
You know what I'm saying? And you sit with I always sat, always watching the exit. My back was never, when someone get behind me, none of that. It's just things you learn in prison, survival tactics that you just pick up. You know what I'm saying? And when you come home, it's hard to break those things. Some people become institutionalized. They come home, man. It's like another battleground.
Yeah.
They can't get along with their family. They're fighting. They argue. Like, it's crazy.
I'm gonna speak to what Seth was saying, just being hyper aware, right? Like how you stated, is like you can walk in a dorm, in a room, in a space, and you get that feeling like you don't know what's wrong. Something ain't right.
Yeah,
so now for me, what I do, right? I start to look at everybody's feet. Once I see everybody with boots on, I know it's on, right? Problem. And so now it's like, now you got to be on. Nobody's on with shower shoes on.
Yeah.
Everybody just kind of like they huddled up around they race or something like that, or they group. So you like, okay, all right, let me get myself in order. You know what I mean? And not be loafing around here.
Yeah,
'Cause I don't
follow
want to get
procedures, man. Follow procedures.
exactly.
You
There
know what
you
it
go.
is.
Right. Even if you're not about that life, again, it forces you to be about that life to survive. You know what I'm saying? Like you just got to make it about it.
Josh in our audience writes, whenever it gets quiet, you know something is about to go down.
Yeah.
Nah,
Absolutely.
for real. Like you just know like some shit's going on. So, and you gotta watch how people's eyes move too.
Yeah.
Cause you be looking, motherfuckers' head just turning and they looking at certain shit.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
hold on, man, something's about to pop off, man.
Yeah.
You
So
know what I
then
mean?
I have a question, and then I'll answer this afterwards. What is the craziest thing as far as a violent encounter that you saw?
I saw a couple of them joints, man.
Mine's
See one
easy.
dude.
I saw a dude get
Okay.
hit with a in the head with a lock and a sock. while he
Yeah,
was sleeping.
I saw the battery.
I saw a guy with a can of mackerel get hit with a sock.
Mackerel
Boom.
batteries, locking a sock. Locking a sock is classic. That's a classic.
That person drops like a bag of water.
Into like
Yo, and her so
Yeah.
and yo, listen, when that shit hits you, that shit it just splits everything open.
Yeah.
Blood everywhere.
So my craziest thing was this dude had just served 10 years. It was Monday, commissary day. He was getting out of prison on Saturday. This guy owed him 2 items, $1 worth of stuff. He told the guy, chalk it up. This dude goes, gets a 6-pack of soda,
Chalk it up.
puts 2 in his front pocket, 2 in his back pocket, 2 in his hand, comes up, hits the dude upside the head. Bust open here, starts gushing. The guy that got hit runs up to the front of the dorm, grabs the trash can lid for the cans that has a little hole in it. So he's got it like a shield. He grabs the mop and they just start running around the dorm. Guy who has a soda stops, throws one. Guy uses the shield to knock it down. And I'm talking about, it was just like, whoa.
The Gladiator school.
This?
Yeah, Gladiator school.
Was that diet or regular soda, by the way?
It was regular Coke.
Ooh, the heavy kind.
They give them less calories.
Just wondering. What was the hard?
That's a good question, Richard.
Thank you. Aaron, what was the hardest thing when you got out to get used to?
Oh man, that's a good question.
Thank you.
I would say
Thank you.
hardest thing. I'll probably say managing, like just getting used to the freedom of like just being able to move how you want to move, right? Because I was in such a routine. Like I knew on a Wednesday at 2 p.m. what I'll be doing literally 6 months from now. You know what I mean? At 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, 6 months from now, I know I'm gonna be working out. Of course, unless the yard was down or something like that. But for the most part, that's what I'll be doing. And so basically like my time management, like really getting
not having the routine.
Not having a routine and just having that freedom to kind of go outside of the regiment and finding a new routine. You know what I'm saying? Like I had the same routine for, 9 years. I really didn't switch up too much because you're trying to get through your time. And so you just want to be as comfortable as possible.
You have a routine now?
I do. Yeah, I do. But it's not like, of course, the routine there because anything can happen. You can be driving down the street and you think you're going somewhere to X location, you get a phone call, it sends you to B location. It's not really like that in prison, right? You kind of know where you're going during a certain time. So yeah.
What was the biggest challenge for you, David, when you got out?
Well, I mean, really the biggest challenge was getting out and not having family support. So while I was incarcerated, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my sister all passed away. And so that was my immediate family. And so my brother was the only person of my immediate family who was there. And we didn't have as close a relationship as I thought we were going to, because he really hasn't been able to deal with the trauma that we experienced. So I think a lot of the times when we're in a lot of conversation, it triggers him, so even to this day, I mean, we have a relationship, but it's not as great as I thought it would be, and So what's amazing now is I'm married, and my wife and we just had a baby boy 2.5 months ago. So
Congrats.
Congratulations.
thanks. So we
Congratulations.
have,
Good for not getting any sleep.
oh,
So,
definitely.
so somebody asks, and this is a great
Yeah,
question that
It
I
is.
never
Yeah, I
thought of.
seen that. I seen that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I apologize, Aaron. Sid asks, is
Yeah.
there anything that you miss
Yeah.
from being out, that
Naps.
you miss in prison that you don't have now?
Yeah.
What is
Time.
Naps.
time?
Time.
Yeah,
Definitely
time.
Ironically.
Because here's the thing. I mean, like even in the county jail, in the county jail, I could be in my cell reading all day, studying, writing, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Now it's like I'm taking care of a baby for like 8 hours a day. I'm working for 8 hours. I'm trying to spend time with my wife. And it's like, where's the day? The day's over with. I can't just lock myself in my cell by myself for 8 hours.
What do you miss, Aaron, if anything?
Yeah, man, that's great, bro. I was just thinking about that the other day. I would say one of the things, I got about three, but I'm just gonna touch on
Go ahead.
one. I used to love working out. Like, I work out like 2 times a day, you know what I mean? Like really get myself in tip-top shape.
Yep, money.
And so it's like, but when you work out in there, you work out in groups with people. And so now it's just me by myself. And so I miss those workouts that I had, just the camaraderie again, just kind of shooting the stuff with your guys, where you working out, they pushing you pushing them. And it's like, it's that's one of the things I miss as far as like with the working out, just being able to kind of be around some good dudes, you know what I mean? They looking out for you as far as on your health and stuff like that. We looking out for each other.
It's like you're sharing this miserable experience together.
There you go. Yeah, you pushing each other. You pushing each other. So
what do you miss, Seth?
Naps.
Naps. Me too.
2 p.m.
There you go.
Like a siesta. Big fella's on his bunk, recharging the batteries.
They announced it on the intercom. The big fella's
If anybody wanted to ever do something to me, they knew where to find me at 2 p.m.
2 o'clock,
every day.
right?
Work out.
It's very funny. I have my whole life have been a terrible sleeper, a terrible sleeper. And when like 3 months before I was going to prison, I couldn't sleep for shit. So I started taking like 100 Ambien every night to fall asleep. And I was seriously addicted to Ambien, which is not a great drug, by the way, to get addicted to. I show up in prison and I'm being checked out by the so-called doctor there, who is as much a doctor as I am. And he mentions, what medicines are you taking? I go, well, of course I'm on Ambien. And he goes, oh, you're not getting Ambien here, And I go, all right. So they led me into this housing unit where I'd be sleeping, at least initially. And they put all the new guys in what they call lakefront property. Lakefront being right by the showers and the bathroom where the water is. They call it lakefront. And they put me on the top bunk, literally like 2 feet away from a row of like 30 toilets and showers. And I get up there, and of course, all night, people are going in and out of there for God knows what reason. And I'm there, and with the light shining on me in this crummy little bunk, and I'm lying there, I'm going, I am never, ever going to fall asleep again while I'm in prison. I mean, that's for sure. I just got to get used to that idea. But of course, over time, as you start calming down about being there and the whole routine kicks in, it becomes the most relaxing place in the world on a certain level. And it is sort of like you're in a mental institution where, everybody's sort of drugged up because it's this slow moving environment, where nothing changes. And for the first time in my life, I started napping. And it was the greatest thing in the world. And since I've been out, I haven't napped once. I can't do it, but in prison, I could nap. So I'm sure you all were very eager to hear that story. Divine, what do you miss about prison?
I have to say, just the structure and and like almost like the solitude where, like the time, if you would, because it allowed me to really focus on self-improvement, whether that's working out, whether that's studying spirituality, better myself through education. It just gives you that time to really focus on yourself and that, improving yourself before you return,
So you really got I mean, in a certain respect, you got a lot out of the experience.
Oh, absolutely, without question. I would, even though I
Well,
didn't like the
right?
experience, I didn't like going to prison because of the negatives of it. There was so many upsides and positives for me as an individual, just really like learning life and just really building myself up spiritually and mentally
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
physically
I
as
always
well.
said if prison had, some women and better food, people would be dying to get in.
Oh yeah, agreed.
It'd be a great resort.
It'd be like the
almost.
cemetery,
agreed.
right?
That was my experience. All right, so we do. I've been doing something towards the end of each episode of The Yard. I get irritated by things every day, as Seth and Divine know. I have a very low tolerance for irritation, and something is always bothering me. And this week, definitely, I've been bothered, and I use this as an opportunity to get it off my chest. Last time, we talked about coronavirus in prison and how people, were catching the disease and dying at ridiculous levels compared to the regular population out there. You know, prisons have been really terrible in letting people out. Jails, as David pointed out, have done a much better job about compassionate release and getting people out of out of jail. Prisons, for those who don't know the difference, are typically where people who have much longer sentences go, which is to say the population is typically much older. That's where older people end up. People don't commit crimes when they're 60 and then go to jail or prison. They commit crimes when they're 20 and 30 and 40 and have to stick around there for 30 years. But people who are older are obviously at much greater risk, to catching coronavirus or whatever else. And when you consider that, they're eating non-nutritious food and they're getting substandard medical care and they're living on top of each other, breathing the same air, it's not a wonder that these prisons have emerged as really viral cesspools, where outbreaks are happening all over the place and continue. If these conditions weren't bad enough, though, over the past week, there's been a hellstorm of freezing cold temperatures that has now found its way into prisons as well. And, it's not just cold weather, obviously, it's power outages. And when the power is out, water pressure doesn't exist because the water company, and I don't know how this all works particularly, but I know they need power in order to get the water flowing. And you have jails and prisons where I heard on the news last night, for 4 days, this one prison, the inmates haven't been able to flush the toilet, not once. And just imagine what that's all about. In Smith County, Texas, I just read, their low-risk facility has had no power or water, not even water, since Monday. And they can't even arrange to get water shipped in, bottled water. So conditions which were awful before and then got worse with coronavirus have just gotten worse and worse and worse. It's unspeakable. And as people have mentioned in the chat here, where they have personal connections to people, they can affirm how awful it is and how powerless people feel about their loved ones. Once again, the sensible, expedient answer to all of this would be to release a lot of prisoners. We tend to look at big problems like the prison, the criminal justice system. They're too complicated, they're too involved. That's bullshit. Like we're saying, local jails have been letting people out. And they're reporting that there is absolutely no increase in crime when they do it. It's not putting anybody at risk.
And they've had like 10% recidivism rate of those people
exactly.
who have been
people are let out and they're not getting into trouble and they're not catching the disease, and the prison and the guards aren't catching it from them, bringing the disease back to their little towns wherever they are. You know, that's a myth. It's a myth that people hold to this day, that people in prison want to be in prison. That's the only place they belong, and that's where they want to be. And, you know, it's just completely bullshit. All they want to do, all we wanted to do, is get out, return to our families, learn our lesson, lead a productive life, never look back, never go back. You know, prisons, as I say, have done very, very little in the way of compassionate release. We've had a few people on here who were out for compassionate release. You know, they were not young, they were 50, 60 years old. And, you know, the data shows, it's not my opinion, people who are that age don't break the law particularly. You know, they're not on the, you don't see 60-year-olds on the streets slinging drugs. You don't see them, you know, on the corner. It's just not, you know, they age out of it, you know? So the risk is so infinitesimal. There are hundreds of thousands of prisoners right now who pose little to no risk whatsoever, that are rotting away, that are at risk, high risk of just getting sick and dying. And there are tens of thousands of them that are in prison for drug offenses, nonviolent crimes, many of them for selling marijuana. I live in Los Angeles. I walk down the street. There are beautiful stores selling marijuana, but these are people who are stuck in prison nonetheless with long sentences and they can't get out of. Again, we talk about these problems as being so intractable and there's no answer. Bullshit. Here's the solution. Today, tomorrow, President Biden should release thousands of these people, period. That's my advice. That's what we could do, and that's what would save lives.
And to top that, my advice would be every governor in all 50 states begin to release these elderly folks, no matter what crime they went to prison for. We have to get away from this violent versus nonviolent carve out, you know, because when you think about the people that have the lowest recidivism rate, these are the individuals who have committed sexual offenses and committed murder. But these are the monsters to society and the media, but they're the individuals who aren't committing new crimes.
Right. That's absolutely so. All right. Aaron, tell me what you're working on now. What's important to you? What are you passionate about?
Man, the main thing I'm working on right now is escaping the odds, the whole media platform. Got the podcast. Been doing that since 2019. Just finished season 1, 41 episodes. Doing season 2. Just completed that. Richard and Divine, y'all were on that one, so look forward to that one. That's dropping March the 9th, that second season. Also, I'm doing a prison to entrepreneurship model, utilizing the transportation industry. So that'll be something that Escaping the Odds we embarking on. So this year,
Cool.
kind of putting that together, and that's it, pretty much.
All right. Well, Adrian put a link to your site, escapingtheodds.com.
There you go.
And I can tell you personally, great conversation, really interesting and well worth your time. David, I know you're involved with the.
Before you go to David, I'm gonna ask you something here. So barring the episode that Dee and Richard were on,
yeah.
What's your favorite what's your favorite episode?
Man, that's a tough one. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick one off this latest season. A young lady, Portia, she did a little bit over 4 years in federal prison, and now she's created this whole beauty permanent makeup or semi-permanent makeup kind of a business model out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So she's really doing her thing. There's another guy who's doing like a technology company coming from incarceration. And so that's huge within itself. Yeah. And so, yeah, I would say those two things are kind of something I'm really excited about.
They stood out. All right, cool. I'm sure they appreciated getting the attention. Yeah. David, you're working on a couple of different things. What are you up to, man?
So actually, I just recently started a new job. So I'm working at Straight Ahead Org and out of Philly and Pittsburgh. And we're working to create a geriatric parole here in Pennsylvania and to work on individuals who have a second-degree murder charge, because in Pennsylvania, if you have first-degree or second-degree murder, you automatically have a life without parole sentence. So we're working on allowing those men and women to be eligible for parole. The other thing that I do a lot of work with is I'm on the board of directors of NARSAL, which is the National Association for Rational Sex Offender Laws. And we're doing a lot of work to abolish the sex offender registry, because if you know a lot about the registry, it does not protect kids. It does not protect people from being sexually abused. You know, what we have to do is we have to provide education, provide things that are actually going to prevent sexual abuse. And it's unique for me to be involved with this work because of my brother and I being abused and taking the offender's life.
Yeah, we were talking about that, Seth and I, that we thought it was very interesting that you were a victim and now you're an advocate.
Well, a lot of that, you know, goes into the aspect of grace and forgiveness, you know. And as a client of Brian Stevenson, one of his famous quotes is, "You're not as bad as the worst thing you've ever done."
Right.
And so if I'm hearing this and he's teaching it, you know, what would it be like if I didn't apply that, you know? And the worst thing, you know, is it just committing a murder? Is it just this? No, the worst thing is anything you've done, you know. And one of the things he always talks about is changing the narrative. And so when I talk about this population, I don't call them a sex offender, because if I call them a sex offender, I'm saying this is who you intrinsically are. You can never change. So
Right.
I say that this population is somebody that's either been convicted or committed a sexual offense. So I humanize them and say, you committed the act, but the act doesn't make you who you are.
Doesn't define you by something you did in the past. Well, coming from you and your experience and what you've learned, and you know, it's got it. You must be a powerful advocate. So for everything that you're doing, and Aaron, for everything that you are doing, my two partners, Seth, do you want to say anything in closing?
Thanks guys for being on. I mean, you know, one of the things that we continuously try to do is just, you know, build community. We know there are amazing people doing amazing work that have gone through the criminal justice system, and you guys are two prime examples of that. And you know, it was great getting to know you guys for sure.
Yep, absolutely. D, you want to close with something?
No, I just thank you for everybody for joining. Really, David, I'd like to commend you on your strength, on your just your level of commitment to this population, because I can imagine how hard it is, man. It really, honestly, like deep inside me, it's breaking my heart, man. Just knowing what you was dealt, and you know how you responded to that, which I don't like. I'm not here to judge anybody or say what's good or what's bad, but I can only imagine what you went through and how you dealt with it, and then being incarcerated, being released, and then just doing the work you're doing, man. It's commendable, man. And I just want to salute you. And Aaron, of course, you my brother. You know how we get down. You know what I mean? The streets is watching, baby. Hustler, recognize hustler, so you know what it is.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks
Thanks a
for joining us,
lot,
man.
man. I appreciate that. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You guys are both great, and we're really appreciative to have you here, along with everybody else who has joined us. There's certain folks who keep coming back week after week, and I can't tell you how Seth and Divine and I and all of our team really appreciate your support. And to have friends who are there. It's like, imagine you're throwing a party every week and you're hoping a lot of people are going to show up, and you can count on your friends who are going to be there. So we're really thankful. And, you know, some of you are active in the chat room, sharing your experiences and insights. And and I see people connecting with each other. I think that's just absolutely amazing. You know, it's what we're trying to do with Commissary Club, is to bridge that connection gap for the first time. You know, I always say there's 70 million of us, 70 million, 1 in 3 adults have a record. We could elect any fucking president we wanted if we came together. We could demand lots of change and a much better world if we came together, but we've got to come together. We got to speak with one voice, and we got to look after each other. And guys like, you know, Aaron and David, or take that to heart, and they're doing something about it. What we like to do, as I wrap this up here, is we leave this Zoom room open. And what we're finding is that there are people who like just hanging out. And maybe they want to share what they've got going on, or share feelings, or make friends, or whatever it is, but it's all really good and what we're after. So please feel free to stay here as long as, a few weeks ago, people were here till 2 o'clock in the morning, just hanging out. So please feel free if that's what you'd like to do. If it's not what you'd like to do, we thank you so much for coming.
Get this move.
Yeah, it's time for us
Catch
to
that
move.
move, Seth. Catch that move.
That's the move.
Open move.
In prison, they tell you, and you gotta, everybody moves at once in prison, so.
Every hour on the hour.
Hey,
Yeah.
they don't say that in state prisons. So I mean, I don't.
You don't got open move, you got something.
All right,
I-
so in any event, thank you all for coming. Please, please tell your friend, if you like what's going on here, tell your friends, invite other people. Adrian's gonna put up a screen that's gonna have our contact info on social media. So she's already doing that, as I see in the chat room. Please follow us. Please connect with us. If you want to be a guest and you've done time, please contact Adrian and we can talk about that. We have some amazing guests coming up. We have Shaka Senghor will be coming in a week or two, and
What?
other amazing, amazing people. You know,
David said, what?
yeah,
Oh,
so
that was
We
great.
know
Right there.
him, man. We in good circles, man.
we're
We run a good
blowing up
circle.
here, and only because we have a lot of friends who are joining us. So thanks a lot for joining us. Be safe and peace, everybody.
Peace.